I'm going to make a start. So, and I've actually been organised enough, and I know what number meeting we're on this week. Although it'd be a lot easier if we just started in the new Rotary year with a new number, and then I'd only have to remember that it was meeting number 2. But it's not. It's meeting number 3,949. So we'll start with, and we'll have to do this sort of without it becoming a major event. So anybody from Clitheroe Club, first of all, bring in any greetings from any other clubs? Oh, somebody's phone ringing. Anybody in Clitheroe bring in any greetings from any other clubs? I don't know if anybody's been anywhere this week that we haven't been before. No?
No.
Yeah,
Right. President Val from Inner Wheel Club of Ribblesdale.
Of course, yes. Whoever that is might be worth muting yourself. So then I believe, unless I am wrong, if you give us a wave, when I think I'll do it as a roll call of clubs, it might be simpler. So I think we've got people here from Great Harwood and Rishton.
Somehow to Zoom.
Give us a wave from Great Harwood and Rishton. Wonderful, lovely to have you with us. Longridge and North Preston have brought a coach load, so give us a wave.
Oh,
wonderful to have you. And so Ian's dad is Preston and Mountain.
Sorry, this is Rich. This is Richard. You don't have to continue calling him Dad.
Ian's dad. Sorry. Richard, welcome from Preston and Mountainous. We've got.
Sorry. I would say if I met up with them, I'm quite sure that President Martin and his members will send you best wishes and greetings. I'm actually a non member now. I did 40 years and then retired graciously, but they may be a non-member.
Lovely. Well, greetings back to them as well. Ribblesdale. I think we've got Liz here from Ribblesdale. Welcome. Accrington. Hi, Malcolm.
Welcome, Tom.
He's there. And John.
Yep.
Lovely to have you with us. Darwin. They were very early in, the Darwin people. Lovely to have you with us.
The wrong time.
I'm not good with the times.
Furnace, obviously we've got DG Val with us from Furnace. Lovely to have you.
Can I bring you the greetings of the Furnace Peninsula Rotary Club and Barrow, Jenny, from our president Nicola to your members.
Lovely, thank you very much, and please do take our greetings back again. We've got 2 visitors from Michigan, so welcome to Renee and Janet.
Greetings from the West Bloomfield, Michigan Club and the newly inducted president as of today.
Oh.
Wow.
Has it happened now, or are we still?
No, we've got a couple hours to go yet.
All right. Okay, so nearly time. Lovely. Then we've got, I think, at least one person here from Ingatstone, one of the other groups that I went to visit.
Hi, it's Helder, and I bring greetings from our president, Neil McAllister. So best wishes.
Lovely, and greetings back from us as well. Have we got Anne here from Sowerby Bridge yet? I don't know if she's made it. Don't think so. And then we've got various friends that I've invited along from. We've got Nicola, who was our speaker a couple of weeks ago. We've got my mum and my sister. We've got Julie over from near Bradford, various friends. Julie and Nicola, we had a sleepover at the Space Centre in Leicester last year, so this is kind of a bit more real life to go with that. And then we've got visitors and guests of various members, so it's lovely to have you all with us. And Bill can have great fun putting all of that into this week's bulletin. We've got one birthday to celebrate. We should need to do that as well. So happy birthday to Alan Sowerbutts on the 4th.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Happy birthday, Alan.
Yes, happy birthday.
And apologies if I've missed any other ones. But yeah, Alan's one of our members. President's remarks, 9th of July, 9 days in, so far so good, I think. That's about all I've got to say today.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I didn't recognise Jean.
Secretary, have we got any secretary's remarks that need to be shared, Tony?
No, not tonight.
No, brilliant. Right, well, let's get on to the matter in hand then. This is when I just need to make sure my technology is all playing as it should. So now that Alan's here, we can blame him for this one really, because when the list of clubs having meetings via Zoom came out, the meeting in Burley Heads was one of the ones that fitted in quite nicely with my timetable, as it were. So I thought I'd go along and say hello and meet them. And at that meeting, I met also Janet from Livonia, who invited me along to their meeting. And that led to being invited to the Super District 64,000 conference, which is where Mike was the speaker. And during the course of that talk, which was very, very late at night, and I'm not really going to admit to all you Rotarians that I might have been attending that conference in my pyjamas, because that would be very unprofessional. But I messaged Janet and said, wow, wouldn't it be great if Mike could be the speaker at Clitheroe Club? And I think Janet may have gone away with a little twinkle in her eye, and a couple of weeks later I got an email, and I have to confess to doing quite a little happy dance around the dining room to say, whoa, he really can come and speak at our club. And on top of that, not only could he come and speak at our club,
this morning.
I've also Mike was also able to send the patches from the 2 missions that he's been on, so that was even better. So just a little introduction to Mike. Captain Mike Foreman is a former naval aviator and a US Naval Academy graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree in aerospace engineering. He graduated with distinction from the US Naval Postgraduate School with a master's degree in aeronautical engineering, and also graduated with distinction from the US Naval Test Pilot School. He has over 7,500 hours of flight time in over 50 different types of aircraft. He was selected to be a NASA astronaut in 1998 and has spent over 637 hours in space during 2 space shuttle missions. While in space, he performed 5 spacewalks for a total of 32 hours and 19 minutes outside the space vehicles, helping to build the International Space Station. After 17 years as an astronaut, Mike left NASA in 2015 to join Venturi Outcomes LLC. And in addition to his duties of president of Venturi, Mike is also the mayor of Friendswood, Texas. So there we go. So this is where hope. So I'm gonna mute you all now.
Yeah, good idea.
And then when we come to some questions, you can just unmute yourself.
Excellent. I'm glad you did that, Jenny. I was hoping I was going to ask everybody to please mute themselves, because I know how it is with Zoom meetings in general. We've been doing them, of course, for months and learning as we go. And my Rotary Club here in Friendswood has been doing some Zoom meetings, and I think Rotary Zoom meetings are the worst, because generally a lot of Rotarians don't spend a lot of time on Zoom, and so they're all making comments to their friends in the room and not realizing that they're not muted. So it is great to be here, though, with you. I say it's great to be with you. I really enjoyed my talk to the district conference a month or so ago. My cousin, John Chambers, was the district governor. And of course, when he was elected to governor, I promised him, 2-3 years ago, when he was governor to be, I promised him I would speak at his governor's conference, district conference. And so I held true to that. Unfortunately, we had to do it via Zoom because of COVID, and then the cat was out of the bag. And I'm trying not to do a lot of these. Frankly, I get requests every day. I just turned my sister down a couple of days ago. My sister said, I have a friend who would like you to Zoom with them. And I said, I just have too many things to do. And I've promised Clitheroe I'm going to talk to them, and then I'm going to try to. So please, all of you, I appreciate you being here this evening, your time, or this morning in Australia. But please don't invite me to do this anymore for a while. When I first heard about Clitheroe, I thought, oh, this would be a great trip back to England. I'll enjoy that. But then she said, no, it's coming up right away, and we're still in COVID. We don't want you to come. Bring your American germs this way. So I'm happy to do it. I really am. But just let it be known that I'm not looking for more engagements. I have plenty to do here. We will save time for Q&A at the end. I'll stay as late as you all want me to, at least until 8 o'clock your time there. And last but not least, because I have to get this in before I forget, Tim Peake is a wonderful friend of mine. If you don't know, Tim Peake is a UK astronaut, just a really good friend of mine. He is such an amazing guy. I'll just tell you, I don't believe the UK could have selected a better representative to be the first astronaut from your country in a while, your countries in a while, because he is just an amazing guy. I haven't seen him in a few years. He was training here in Houston for a couple of years, and then he went to space, and since being in space, they've probably got him back over there somewhere in Europe. European Space Agency has him probably busy. So I'll get off of that topic, but I will say that if any of you have an opportunity to go listen to Tim Peake speak somewhere, please go up to him afterwards and tell him that Mike Foreman says hello. I want him to hear that every time he goes to speak somewhere. So please bother him, and that'll be great. He'll really enjoy it, I think, if you tell him that I said hello. I hope. So with that being said, I'll kick this off. Jenny, I guess you're with me on the slides here. I see myself on this first slide. The picture in the upper left always gives me a little bit of a chuckle, because that was taken in 1998 when I was a brand new astronaut. My hair is not quite that dark anymore, as you can see, maybe. But that was my rookie card. And since then, I've had my picture taken a few 100,000 times. But anyway, we don't get any younger. Go ahead to the next slide. What I was going to do tonight, and I'll just tell you while she's advancing, hopefully this works. There's the mission patch from STS-129, which was my second of my 2 space shuttle missions. And Jenny asked if I could send her some mission patches. So I sent her the whole Mike Foreman collection, which is the 2 mission patches that she showed you earlier. I was on an earlier space shuttle mission, and then tonight I'll talk to you about STS-129. Very unique space shuttle patch design. Most important thing to most astronauts is that it has our names on it. So, you know, we like to see our names on the patch, and that kind of signifies that we really are on a mission destined to go to space. So that's our mission patch. Let me introduce you to my crew here quickly. The next slide, please. So we had 6 of us assigned to this mission, STS-129, and some of you I know are space shuttle aficionados, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, the space shuttle could carry 7 astronauts. Why send only 6 on this particular mission? And that would be a great question. The answer is that one of our jobs on STS-129 was to bring Nicole Stott, another U.S. astronaut, back from the International Space Station. She had gotten a ride up on an earlier space shuttle mission, and her duty was done once we got there, and so we gave her a ride home. So we saved her an empty seat. And by NASA's rules, you are not an official member of a space mission unless you launch to space with that crew. So if you just come back from space with that crew, you're not an official member of the crew, so you don't get your picture taken in the official crew portrait, which this is. And you will see her. I have a picture of Nicole here. And then after I show you a couple of picture slides, I'm going to hopefully play a video of what we did on that mission, and a short video to show you what we did. And you'll see Nicole throughout the video, I'm sure. One thing I'm thinking as I look at this picture again is that it was kind of funny that the three of us on the left side of your screen, we had all been to space before. And the three guys on the right-hand side of the screen, this was all their first mission for the three of them. So I always get a little chuckle of how, and I think we just kind of lined up, you know, our commander and our pilot are in front, but the rest of us are grouped behind. And there was no rhyme or reason to why three of us that had been to space formed up on the left side of the picture and the others on the other side. But I laughed because it looks like we were kind of all ready to take the picture. And then when the photographer said he was ready, three of us said, let's step away from the rookies, you know. So we moved. That's not what we did. I never called these first timers rookies. You know, they were very well trained and ready to go and did a marvelous job on our mission. So I do, you know, the little things that you think of when you're doing these talks is I just laugh. So next slide. Moving on, I'll introduce these guys a little more individually to you so you know who you're seeing in the video here in a minute. This is our commander. This is a guy named Charlie Hobaugh. He's a U.S. Marine Corps fighter pilot. His call sign, all tactical military aviators in the U.S. have call signs. His call sign is Scorch. He was our commander. So in space shuttle days, we didn't have a pilot and a co-pilot flying the space shuttle. We didn't have a captain and a first officer like the airlines. We had a commander and we had a pilot. So Scorch is our commander. If you go to the next slide, this is Captain Barry Wilmore, U.S. Navy captain, call sign Butch. He's another Navy fighter pilot. He was our pilot. So he is actually helping Scorch fly the space shuttle. Go back one slide if you can, Jenny. Go back to the commander slide real quick. So think of it this way. Scorch is the guy flying the space shuttle. And now move ahead to Butch again. Butch, as our pilot, he was there to push the button to make the wheels come down at the end of our mission. So he was actually, you know, I'm hoping you're chuckling. It's a little bit difficult doing these talks with no oral feedback, but that's okay. I don't want you to unmute. I joke about Butch as being the pilot, his primary duty, pushing the button to make the wheels come down. He had a lot of things that he did on this mission, aside from making sure that Scorch flew the space shuttle all right. But I always make that joke about him. And in fact, I saw Butch not too long ago, and I was telling him, I said, Butch, I should apologize to you because I gave a talk the other day about our mission, and I told people that you were our pilot and your primary duty was to push the button to make the wheels come down at the end of the mission. And you know, he just looked at me and he said, Mike, it was 2 buttons. So he reminded me, yeah, it actually took 2 button pushes to make the wheels in the space shuttle come down. You didn't want to have an astronaut inadvertently put the wheels down at the wrong time. So they required 2 button pushes to make it happen. So Scorch and Butch are the guys in charge of our mission. And another thing, Jenny mentioned that I had graduated from the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School. I actually went back after graduating from the test pilot school, being a test pilot in the Navy for a little while. They called me back to be an instructor, a flight instructor at the Navy Test Pilot School. And a flight instructor at the Navy Test Pilot School teaches pilots how to become test pilots. So I just always remind people that, or tell people that Scorch and Butch were students of mine when they both went through test pilot school, and I was an instructor by then. So I'm a little older than them. So I always tell people in my audiences that you have to make sure that you treat everybody the way that you would want to be treated, you know, in the future, in case you know, they ever become your boss on a space shuttle mission. You know, you want to. So I treated them well. We've been good friends ever since we met back at the test pilot school days. And speaking of test pilot school days, you know, I spent some time at Boscombe Downs, so I've been over there to the British test base and had a good time flying a lot of different airplanes over there in my Navy career. Anyway, moving on. Next slide, please. We'll get to Leland Melvin. Leland is one of the mission specialist astronauts on this mission, as I was one as well, mission specialist. Leland's got an interesting story. Leland is a very smart guy, and he went to school. He grew up in the state of Virginia. He went to school at the University of Richmond in Richmond, Virginia, and he studied chemistry there. He also played football, American football, and he was such a good wide receiver that he got drafted by a professional football team here in the United States after he graduated, the Detroit Lions. And to groups in the U.S., I always joke that, you know, the Detroit Lions, I guess that's a professional football team, and it is, but, you know, we joke about certain teams. And anyway, for Janet, Karen there in Michigan, I joke that Leland maybe didn't really play for a professional football team because it was the Detroit Lions. But anyway, he played for Detroit for a short amount of time and unfortunately got injured. They dropped him from that team. He got picked up by the Dallas Cowboys, and he went to work for the Dallas Cowboys, played for them for another short amount of time, and got injured again. And at that point, they said, Leland, we think you're going to have chronic hamstring injury issues. We don't see you having a long career in the NFL. You should probably look for a business job elsewhere. So he said, well, okay, I'll go back. I'll be a scientist at NASA. So he did. He went back to the state of Virginia, where we have a NASA Research Center in Langley, and he worked there for about 8 years. And while he was there working as a scientist, he went back to school. I told you he had a bachelor's degree in chemistry, and he got a master's degree in material science, and he's an expert in fiber optics. And like I said, very smart guy. One day he decided that, hey, NASA has an astronaut program. I think I'll apply to that. Well, shifting to me for just a minute, I grew up in the state of Ohio. I always wanted to be an astronaut. I was a kid when I was 8 years old. I wanted to be an astronaut. So grew up, became a test pilot, got 2 degrees in engineering, started to apply to NASA. And in the end, I applied to NASA 8 times. So when I first met Leland was the 8th time I had applied to NASA. We met at the Johnson Space Center where they interview people to become astronauts. We were both in the same interview group that week. And at that point in my life, I had wanted to be an astronaut for about 32 years. Leland, on the other hand, had wanted to be an astronaut for about 32 minutes. He just kind of applied, and, you know, kind of a, you know, thing. I think I'll just toss this application in. And the good news is we both got selected. The bad news is I don't like Leland because, you know, of course, he didn't have to suffer through all that pain and angst of apply, get rejected, apply again, get rejected, apply. He just applied one time, got accepted, and here we are. We were in the same astronaut class. So I joke about not being good friends because we were great friends, and I really enjoyed flying in space with one of my astronaut classmates that we had sort of grown up together as astronauts and got to fly this mission together. So it was a lot of fun. I joke that now Leland, he, as a former astronaut like me, he goes around speaking, and his sort of his tagline as well. I started out as a professional football player. That didn't work out. So my backup plan was to be an astronaut. So yeah, you know, it's good to have a backup plan, right? So that's Leland Melvin. Moving on, I think we have Randy Bresnick on the next slide. Maybe. Still there, Jenny? I see your lips moving a little bit, yeah. There we go. Randy Bresnick, another mission specialist. Randy Bresnick's another Marine fighter pilot, call sign Comrade. I had to think for a second. Randy actually got hired to be a space shuttle pilot astronaut. So he could have actually been assigned to this mission doing the job that Butch was doing. But early in his training, Randy did some spacewalk training. And he did such a great job at spacewalk training that we thought we really need to put Randy on a mission as a mission specialist and allow him to do some spacewalks. Back in the space shuttle days, we didn't allow our commander or our pilot to do spacewalks because we didn't want them to get injured, not be able to fly us home. So we put Randy on as a spacewalker and our flight engineer, and he did a great job. And just a side story, you'll see in the video, as Randy's getting ready to climb into the shuttle, he was the last of the 6 of us to come aboard and get strapped in. He turns to the camera in the white room there, the little room that's adjacent to the hatch that where we crawl into the space shuttle. He turns to that camera and he blows a little kiss. And that is because his wife, that day that we launched back in 2009, was 9 months pregnant. She was literally due to have her baby and was just hanging on, and actually got to come to Florida to watch us launch, and didn't have her baby until a few days after we got into space. So everything was fine, but he felt the need, I think, as the impending papa there to blow a little kiss. So that's Randy Bresnik. Since this mission in 2009, Randy, who is still an active astronaut, has been back to the space station and spent 6 months up on the space station as the commander of the International Space Station. So that's Randy Bresnik. Next, we have Dr. Bobby Satcher. Bobby Satcher, medical doctor. I save him for last because Bobby is definitely the smartest guy on our crew, probably smarter than the other 5 of us put together. When I first met Bobby, I knew he was a medical doctor. In fact, he's an orthopedic surgeon. So I asked him, Bobby, I said, where did you go for your undergraduate degree? And he said, well, I went to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And I said, wow, you know, that's impressive. I wouldn't think of very many medical doctors as having an undergrad degree from MIT. And he said, well, I went to MIT because I wanted to study chemical engineering. I got my degree in chemical engineering. I said, wow, that's impressive. So where did you go to medical school? And he said, I went to Harvard. I said, wow, that is equally impressive, if not more so. And so I was totally impressed by Bobby. And then about 6 years later, after our first conversation, I found out he actually has a PhD in chemical engineering from MIT. Got his medical degree from Harvard. And when I put all this together, when I found this out, I asked him, I said, Bobby, you're a young guy. How could you possibly have done all this and still, you know, been a practicing orthopedic surgeon when NASA selected you to be an astronaut? And he said, well, the nice thing was that when I got my bachelor's degree from MIT and got accepted to Harvard, MIT told me that I could come back anytime I wanted and work in the laboratory there at MIT on my PhD. I said, so let me get this straight. While you're going to Harvard Medical School, you're using your spare time to go back to MIT and work on your PhD in chemical engineering? And he said, yeah, well, it was kind of nice that they let me do that. I said, you have smoke coming out of your ears. You are so smart. That is crazy. So Bobby Satcher, definitely a smart guy. I always tell people that when I was a kid growing up in Ohio, you know, before I even decided I wanted to be an astronaut, before I probably knew what astronauts were, I was about 5 years old. My mother was a career nurse, and she sat me down one day and said, Mike, when you grow up, you should go to MIT and then become a doctor. I have no idea why she put MIT with that plan, but I understand why mothers want their kids to be doctors, at least back then. I had no idea, you know, where she got the MIT part. But I do know now my mother's favorite astronaut is Bobby Satcher because he went to MIT and became a doctor. So next slide. This is the picture I promised you. That is Nicole Stott. They took this picture of us just as we were getting our suit on to come back home to deorbit and land back home. So a quick picture of Nicole, and then hopefully I'm hoping that when you push that next button, Jenny, if the video starts to play. Yeah, there's Atlantis on the launch pad. We're getting suited up about this time, getting ready to go out. There we are, all suited up, walking out of the building. Get into the Astro van, which takes us to the launch pad. And it's a kind of a historical vehicle that's taken astronauts out to the launch pad for decades. And there we are at the base of the pad, get into the elevator, take the elevator up to the 195-foot level. There we are wandering around. Here's our commander, Scorch, getting his last bit on there. Me and our pilot, Butch, going in next. Leland and Bobby. And then last but not least, here's Randy. Quick kiss for the camera.
Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system activated.
Now.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
7.5 million pounds of thrust.
Roger, roll is landed.
Communications going on now between our commander and mission control, making sure we can hear them and they can hear us. Getting up very quickly after about 2 minutes and 10 seconds. The solid rocket boosters, which provide the bulk of the thrust, have done their job. They're out of propellant, so they come off. During the space shuttle program, we would pick up those boosters out of the Atlantic Ocean and reuse them. We get to space, pull out our cameras, start taking our home movies here. Everybody's happy to be in space. See, somebody's helmet pad is floating there. We had to fire some thrusters to circularize our orbit. And when the thrusters kicked off, the pad comes flying back and Randy makes a nice catch. Leland's down on the middeck now, getting changed out of his orange suit into some more comfortable clothing. It takes about 6 hours to convert this rocket into a spaceship. We're turning on the galley, turning on the bathroom. There's me. I like to look good for the camera, so I'm getting cleaned up. There's the International Space Station. That's our destination. When we first see it, it looks like a bright star, and as we get closer and closer, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's about 2 football fields across, so it's very large, especially compared to the space shuttle, which was an airliner-sized vehicle. There's Atlantis. We had about 28,000 pounds of cargo in the back there. We did this flip maneuver as we approached the space station so astronauts could take pictures of all the black tile surfaces on the bottom and make sure we didn't have any damage during launch. This is our rendezvous here as we're approaching to our dock at the space station. Both vehicles now traveling 17,500 miles an hour, but coming together very slowly so we don't do any damage when we actually merge. So come together. Leland there with his back to us, he's helping the commander who's looking out the window, the back window now, as we approach the space station, telling him how far we are away, giving him a call so that he can make his final
no free
approach
drift yet.
Make sure we're centered up on that
Still steady line
mechanism. We open up the hatches, float inside. The space station had 6 astronauts and cosmonauts on board, so this was sort of a mini reunion for all of us. We hadn't seen some of these people in 6 months or so. Our pilot, Butch, he wanted to capture a video of the video tour of the space station. So he got Jeff Williams, one of the American astronauts up there with a camera. They started in the Russian end of the space station. So this is where the Russians work and live and keep all of their stuff. And here in a second, you'll see where they store all their junk right here. Passing through the U.S. laboratory, that's a Belgian astronaut, Frank de Winne, we just passed. This is the U.S. laboratory. There's a Canadian astronaut, Bob Thirsk. Here to the right, you're going to see the European laboratory we call Columbus. And to the left is the Japanese laboratory called Kibo, which means hope. Float down through this tunnel, we'll come out on the middeck of Atlantis. Our cameraman's not sure which way is up right now, but there's our commander. I never see him doing any work. Butch is going to float up to the flight deck of Atlantis, and you see all the controls and displays up there. Everything's powered down while we're docked in the space station, and there is the space station out the window. We did 3 spacewalks on this mission, so when we first got to the space station, we were busy getting the space suits ready. Here we are getting in the suits. There's Nicole. Nicole and Butch are in this airlock with us. There's Bobby putting on his helmet. I've already got my helmet on. There you can see I'm ready to go. But Butch and Nicole helped us quite a bit to get ready. We float outside the hatch there. Beautiful views from outside the space station. I always tell the astronauts that don't get to do spacewalks that the view from inside is pretty good, but the view that you have from your helmet outside is just amazing. My cuff checklist there, it's hard to see. It says, "Go Navy, beat Army." That's an S-band antenna that we took up. I'm unbolting it while Bobby Satcher is riding the robotic arm. He's got a great perch there on top of that arm. You can see from his helmet camera looking down at the space shuttle. Leland and Butch are inside. They're playing that video game where they control where Bobby's robotic arm goes and moving him to get close enough to me so I could hand him this antenna. And then we met over on the space station side, and here we are attaching it on the outside of the space station. There's a reflection of Bobby, one of the radiators. Randy was our quarterback for his first spacewalk, so he's inside sort of choreographing everything, reading our procedures to us, reminding us where we go next, giving us our tool settings, keeping us on our timeline. I told you Bobby was an orthopedic surgeon, so we had him work on a couple of the other robotic arms on the space station, using his surgery skills to fix some things. So he's got a pretty good view of the Earth going by as they move him from one robotic arm to the next. And here he is pulling up in front of, that's the Japanese robotic arm. And he said, Mike, as an orthopedic surgeon, I could use the same grease gun on your knee if you need some work. And I said, my knees are good. Leland and Butch are inside there watching Bobby's helmet camera on that laptop, so they know when he needs to move. Now it's 2 days later. Randy and I went out on a second spacewalk together, so we're back in the airlock again, getting some help. Getting help from Butch to get our pants on, and there's me floating outside. They asked Randy and I to move this big antenna here from one side of the space station to the other. So here we are disconnecting and unplugging this antenna. Once we got it down and disconnected, we carried it over to the other side of the space station, and they had a place for us to set it back up over there. Coming up, this is a great view from my helmet camera, looking at Randy and his suit there. That's his safety tether that he's dealing with in front of him, the thing that connects us to the outside of the space station. And here's somebody looking at us from inside the space shuttle window. I've talked about spacewalks. We don't really use our legs doing a spacewalk at the International Space Station. There's nothing to walk on. You would just float away if you tried to walk on the outside of the space station. So it's 6.5 or 7 hours of climbing around on the outside of it. We try not to move this in real time. We don't move very fast because we don't want to fall off. It's 250 miles up. My crewmates love this segment of the video where it shows me trying to get out of my suit now that I've been in it for about 8 hours. Butch has to stand on my legs, hold my sleeves up, and push me down out of this thing while I wriggle and contort myself to get out of it. They get a chuckle, but I always remind them that I have big bicep muscles that get caught in the sleeves. I told you Leland was a football player. Here's why he probably doesn't play football anymore. Well, he kind of missed that, but there was catching a football and getting hit at the same time. Nicole, the space station crew, has their backs to us. They just passed Nicole over to us as we are about to leave.
Separation.
And here we are departing the space station. You see out the window, the space station
TCS is good.
Up, and we're moving down.
Panels are clear. I got LBLA.
When you come home. Leland's playing with his food again. We've been known to do this. He's extruded some of his drink bag, his water out, and forms a sphere in weightlessness. We didn't have any of those Swedish fish to make an aquarium, so he put some M&Ms in there for color. And here we are back in our orange suits again, ready to come home. And there's the Kennedy Space Center, big long runway there. And I told you about Butch's job, putting the wheels down. And you tell right now he's taking his sweet time because the wheels aren't down yet. Here they come, right there. Good job, Butch. No time like the present. Wheels come down. Scorch makes a nice little correction there at the end. The inset view shows how white hot space shuttle is after re-entry. All that frictional heating through the atmosphere. And even though that runway is very long at the Kennedy Space Center, 3 miles long, we use a drag chute to help us stop. So there's the drag chute helping the Atlantis slow down. The drag chute comes off about 70 miles an hour. Sorry, I haven't done the kilometer conversion in my head, but drag chute comes off. We use the brakes to stop. There's our mission patch again. And let's see, is that it? Yeah, guess that's it. Okay.
So we've got a few minutes for questions. One that's coming via the chat is there a common language on the space station?
Thankfully for me, it's English. So, as you can tell, I've been in this English immersion program for about 63 years now, and I'm just starting to get the hang of it. So yes, the Russians speak pretty good English. All the European astronauts speak it very well. Tim Peake gives us lessons, and we all go from there. Japanese astronauts as well speak pretty good English. So yes, the international language of space is English.
Excellent. Just maybe a couple of questions, but you'll have to raise your virtual hand so that I can see you've got a question, because I've got far too many people otherwise. No questions?
I have one, please.
Oh yes, certainly. Go ahead, Dex.
What was it like when you came out of the Earth atmosphere and changed into the space atmosphere?
Well, I'll tell you, we couldn't really tell that we were leaving the Earth's atmosphere. The whole launch on the space shuttle from the ground to being in orbit in space took 8.5 minutes. So you're there before you really know it. You're just hurtling into space, thrust back in your seat the entire time. A lot of forces on you as you accelerate that much to get to 25,000 kilometers per hour is how fast we have to travel to stay in orbit up there. So
Wow.
we're going from 0 to 25,000 in a matter of 8 minutes. And so there's a lot of acceleration there, but we don't realize when we've exited the atmosphere. We just know once the engine's cut off that we are in space, and we can unstrap and start floating around.
Thank you.
Matthew has a question.
Hello, Mike. My name's Matthew. How do you eat in space?
Oh, how do you eat? Good question. That was one high on my mind as well. Fortunately, you know, our bodies work just like they do down here, even without gravity. Everything works as advertised. And eating food, just exactly the same. You know, the food is pretty good. I always tell people that I liked all of my food because I was responsible for choosing what was going to be on my menu. And I was shown a list of about 200 different items that NASA has to select from. That means main courses, side dishes, snacks, desserts, drinks, so many things to choose from. And I had tested a lot of those things so that I had sampled, knew what I liked. So I chose all the things that I liked. People ask me what my favorite space food is, and I tell them it's peanut M&Ms because I took a lot of those with me as snacks, keep me going in between meals. You know, grab a handful of peanut M&Ms. But anyway, everything works great, and eating and drinking is just like here.
Wonderful. Martin Hill has a question.
Hello, Mike. I think, am I unmuted? Yes, I am unmuted. Mike, in today's times, we see so much about artificial intelligence and robotic cars, self-driving cars, and fantastic robots. Is there any future for manned space travel to places apart from the space station where you've got to do some repairs by hand, but to go back to the moon and even think of going to Mars? Is there any point in doing it with people?
Oh, I definitely believe there is, Martin. For one, I can tell you all the stories when my personal experiences doing spacewalks where I actually had to think on my feet instead of just relying strictly on all of my training and what we had rehearsed over and over again that we were going to do on a 6 or 7 hour spacewalk. There was always something that came up that we had to work around, solve this problem on the go, you know, and obviously, well, we know robots can only do what they're programmed to do, so they can't think, they can't solve problems on the go. So I think we'll always have an important role for Americans and humans, not just Americans, I'm sorry, for humans.
Thank you.
Humans,
So Tony, one last question.
We'll always have a role for humans to go to space because, for one thing, it inspires people like Dex and the other gent that asked the question a minute ago. So that's what we want to do, is we want to inspire the future. We want to continue our exploration.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So Tony Perry, one question, and then over to Andy for a vote of thanks.
Okay, Mike, just a quick question. You went through a lot of discipline training as part of a test pilot school and instructor, and then as an astronaut. Now you're in business again as a president of a corporation. What do you feel that the skills that the astronaut and test pilot training contribute to your current role?
Well, that's a great question, Tony. That's a whole different talk, but I give it to you in a nutshell. You know, I grew up, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy. That's a service academy that produces naval officers, Marine Corps officers in this country. And you know, the leadership skill that I took away from that was very autocratic. You know, when I say jump, you jump, you know, and that's how we have to be leading our sailors, Marines in wartime. And we all know that. But as I grew and became a project officer, as a test pilot, and we're working with civilian teams and people that didn't respond as well as some of our sailors, you know, when I couldn't just say jump and they would respond, I had to be a little more collaborative, you know, in my leadership style, and work together to solve problems on aircraft that I was tasked to work on as a test pilot. And then moving to NASA, you know, I became more of a consensus builder leader, because NASA has learned, you know, the hard way over the years that if we don't get a chance to listen to everybody has a voice, and sometimes we miss a problem because we didn't let the smaller voice have his say, you know, and we kill people. Then we learn to definitely gain consensus before we move on with a project. So consensus building has certainly worked for me at NASA and beyond as a leader in my project management firm that we run. It certainly works with our project managers and solving the problems that we do day in and day out. And certainly as a mayor of a small town, you know, I'm just one vote among 7 council members. You know, I get to call the votes, I get to set the agenda, but I'm just one vote. And if I want to solve a problem in the city, yes, my dog is my dog is here. So I guess she's giving me the time's up thing. But anyway, consensus building is something I did very well at NASA, and has served me well beyond. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Andy.
I've been genuinely excited about meeting a fellow STEM ambassador today, Mike, and I'm sure that's another whole talk as well. And of course, we've all probably been scouring you or stalking you on Wikipedia and LinkedIn and all sorts to. But since 2000, 240 people from 19 countries have visited the International Space Station, and we've all just met one of them. But not just you, Mike, but the crew, demonstrating that teamwork is probably the key to most things. And ISS, the other interesting thing, is the most expensive object ever built at $120 billion. And I suspect that budget took less time to agree than we would putting £2 on our subs. So, Mike, thanks for sharing your experience of being a spaceman, a mayor, and answering our questions, and generally being pretty inspiring, even though you had to apply 8 times to get in. And of course, it wouldn't be the privilege of having the vote of thanks without throwing a joke in, but you didn't mention any of the health advantages of being in space, because you don't get hemorrhoids in space, you just get asteroids.
Oh.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate that
So
one. I'm gonna use that one.
Imagine lots of questions still to ask, but just point out that you've got a pretty impressive Wikipedia page. It doesn't mention Rotary, but now you can mention Clitheroe Rotary, and you and your dog have been out of this world. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Been a real pleasure speaking to all of you. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Jenny, for painstakingly setting this up and having to deal with the technology that goes with it. I'm sure maybe that's a little bit of a help in all of these people not wanting me to speak to their groups, knowing what you had to just go through with the video there. So maybe that's a good thing. But hopefully I'll get to meet you all in person one day. And if you're ever in Friendswood, Texas, please stop by and see me.
Well, I think Matthew and Catherine are top of the list for a trip out there. It's our tradition when we've had a guest speaker to give them one of our lovely Clitheroe Rotary pens. So it might take us a little bit longer, but there will be one on its way to you. All that it remains for me to do is to thank everybody for attending. I think we got up to 72 attendants in the end, so it's been wonderful to have you all here. Let's just end as we normally would with the Rotary toast of Rotary Fellowship and peace the world over.
Rotary Fellowship, peace
the world over.
Cheers.
Cheers.